Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. And today I am hanging out with my personal assistant and my TA, Delia, who is here to talk about the upcoming class that I'm teaching called Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. So, what we're going to try to do today is field a whole bunch of questions that have come in to us through emails over the past couple of months and that typically come in every time that I offer the class, and just talk to you a little bit more about what this program entails and try to answer a lot of the questions so that we also have someplace to send people when they ask questions. So that's what we're doing today. And thanks for being here, Delia.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Delia has been like my wingman for the past year, basically, and she is also a student and alumni of my programs, and is like the main teaching assistant for all of my programs. So if you take my courses, you will see a whole lot of Delia and interact with Delia a lot, as well as myself. Um, so on that note, Delia has aggregated a bunch of your questions about the course, and I'm going to answer them, but Delia is also going to answer them because she has her hand in almost everything that happens in the course. So we'll both try to field them for you guys. And then at the end of this program, today, at the end of this recording, I will also point you to where and how you can sign up. But if you're listening to this right away and you're like, I just want to go right away and just go check it out right away, you can go to nightlightastrology.com and check out the first year course. That's your starting point. That's the Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic course. You can check it out there. All right. So what kind of questions do we have, Delia?
All right, Achita. Well, I think we should start with the basics. How and when do the classes take place?
Yeah, good. Very Virgo rising, right? Get the details. Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, the upcoming class meets on Saturdays at noon Eastern time. And so that's 11 Central where I'm at in Minneapolis, St. Paul. It meets for usually between 2 and 3 hours. So your every week is a little different depending on where we're at in the course, what lecture we're giving, but usually you'll go 2 to 3 hours, and then there's usually some Q&A at the end. Um, Class could stretch as long as 3.5 hours on occasion with the Q&A, but people can often leave much earlier than that after the regular lecture is over. It meets on Saturdays during that time, for a little less than a year, but it's about a year, so we call it the first year course. And it's going to meet starting on November 14th this year. And then in the springtime, there'll be another program that starts on Sundays in June of 2021 at the same time, noon Eastern. Now, that meeting schedule is 30 classes on the year. So there's 30 full lectures on the year that work like that. And so you have a rhythm of a couple of weeks on, and then typically a week off, followed by a breakout study session where Delia is going to be leading people who want a little additional tutoring through an optional tutoring afternoon together. So that's, and then we get back into the next unit and we go like that through the year. We also, in addition, have 12 guest speakers that come in and give talks. And those aren't, sometimes they're on our class days and during our class hours. Other times they're held during another section's class hours and class day. Those are all put into a folder for everybody so that you can access it even if you can't be there live. So that's pretty much the structure of the program, scheduling wise. Is that good, Delia?
Yes, I would just add that there is no attendance requirement. So if you have some other work commitments or anything else, you don't have to worry if you ever have to skip a class. You can always check out the recordings. And as Achuda mentioned, you'll be able to download those and keep them even after the course ends. And the other thing that I want to point out, which might not be immediately obvious to everyone, is that the classes are live. They're held live over Zoom. And so you will be able to join and interact, right? Live in class.
Yeah. So we have two types of students. Delia is in Mexico City. We have people from South Africa, from Australia, from India. I mean, just all over the world, literally. And then we have a lot of people who are in the United States. So people oftentimes join live in the webinars themselves, in which case, you're going to have a slightly more interactive experience, right? Because you're going to be able to ask questions live or come onto the microphone or web camera and share space with everyone, including, Delia and I. But many people also, because of their scheduling or time zone conflicts, will take the class remotely, which means all of it is housed for you online, replays of everything, audio, video, transcripts of the class, like the whole nine yards. So um, you can always follow along remotely. And we have probably, I'd say maybe 40% of our students, maybe even 30 or 40% probably follow remotely.
Okay, that actually segues into another question. People asking, for example, hey, I live in Australia and I can't attend the live classes. Can I still participate in the course? The answer is yes, but I guess the real question would be what kind of student participation can they have if they are taking the course remotely?
Yeah, so there's a couple of good answers for that. One is we have a classroom forum where people are often having discussions actively, and sometimes people within those forums will form study groups outside of class on their own. That's actually quite popular. People do that in like every program, it seems. You have your breakout study groups, which may give you maybe that's a little less like you can plan in advance for them, and even then, that would be something you could plan for. Um, you can email us. You can email Delia and myself anytime with questions about the material you're learning. We're there for you. It's like open office hours year round. So you can just contact us and we can help you with whatever questions you have. And then I think there's also, if you, depending on how engaged you want to be, the course is structured so that you can be really, really engaged or you can be more casually engaged. Like if this is more of a hobby for you and you're really excited to just like deepen your hobby, or if it's something that you're just really, you want to go really deep with and maybe even take up professionally. There's so much content and bonus material and additional optional reading and homework and stuff like that that we don't expect people will get through all of it. We just provide a lot of it so that you can go as far as you want. And that material, if you're following up with that as well as taking in the lectures and so forth, and then reaching out and asking questions as you have them to us, a lot of remote students do really well if they just stay in touch with us and keep up with the extra material as much as they can.
Who answers the questions?
Delia or myself. I've trained Delia, so anything that Delia responds to is something that I've taught her how to respond on, right? So if there's very basic questions that are really easily answered, and Delia is the TA of the course, so she'll answer them. If there's deeper questions that Delia may not know the answer to, or they're more advanced or technical, or they are more philosophically nuanced or something like that, I'll often chime in. But oftentimes I field questions too. It just depends on the volume and the day. If there's a lot of questions coming in, Delia will take a handful to help me out because I can't get to all of them. But there's nothing that you're ever getting that's not, in a sense, coming from the way I teach astrology, because like I said, I've trained Delia to, respond to questions.
Yes. I also want to mention that I do have teaching experience as well in other fields. I taught English as a foreign language in the business environment for about 10 years. But just besides that, generally, I've always been like the person to, like help you out with your homework or, my classmates in high school and things like that. And so I guess the answer is I'll field the questions that I can take, especially if a tutor doesn't have time. But if there's anything that I don't feel like I can answer satisfactorily, then it's like, okay, I'll pass that on to a tutor, but you'll be getting support from both of us.
Yeah. And don't forget, Delia is also an attorney who went to law school. So, she's smart as a whip and very responsive and quick, and is often helping me do and understand things and become more efficient at things that I do all the time. So she is like one of the world's most helpful people that I've ever met, which is why I love working with her. So you guys will too. You guys will find that she's amazingly helpful.
Oh, thank you for that. Okay. You touched upon this a little bit, but what kind of time commitment is required for the course?
Yeah, so it depends on why you're taking the course. We have people that take the course for spiritual. I have people who are in retirement taking the course because they want to do something in retirement. I have people taking the course because they want to become professional readers. I have people taking the course because astrology is their hobby outside of work. There's so many different reasons that people take the course. Certification is optional. At the end, you can take a certification exam. And that track, if you're following that track, you're going to be wanting to do the reading, the optional quizzes, the homework. You're going to want to re-listen to lectures. And I would say that for every, you know, if class is 3 hours, you're going to want to spend 3 hours outside of class in the week following, to keep up in that manner. I honestly, though, the people who are the most excited and, passionate about astrology typically don't need any instruction from me about how much time to spend, because they're kind of just in it a lot. And those who are just more casually interested also don't need any instruction from me, because they just take what they're interested in from all of the additional content that's there in every lesson folder, which is all laid out for you. So you can, oh, that looks interesting. I'd like to see more, an extra talk on that subject or whatever. So I find that there's definitely enough if you want to go really deep. And if so, I would say, 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours a week studying, if you really want to be like very focused, is probably good. But for people who are taking it more casually, literally just listening to the lectures and following along and just taking it into your life like you do astrology already, however much you're already taking in, is probably fine to get a lot out of it.
What expenses are there besides tuition, and is professional astrology required for the course?
Yeah, so the course recommends two main textbooks that combined are probably just a little under $100, if I remember correctly. Do I have that right, Delia?
I think yes.
It's Chris Brennan's Hellenistic Astrology, which is a great sort of massive textbook on Hellenistic astrology, and then Demetra George's Ancient Astrology, which is a very good complementary textbook on Hellenistic astrology. There's also there's books throughout that I recommend supplemental reading in that are totally optional, and that bibliography is included in the course material. But those are the two textbooks that I would say, if you wanted to do reading in addition, you would be spending a little bit of money on those. They're going to come in under $100 together. They're big textbooks though, and they're reference books that'll last you for a lifetime if you want to do this. Like, you'll never ever not be using them because they're really great. And then the other cost would be, at some point, if you want, you can buy professional astrology software. However, there are free programs online that can certainly last you for a while. And we give you all of that. And you can get an astrology software program for, $60. You can spend several $100s. So we also give you a range of options in terms of how much you want to spend. And if you can't spend anything on a software program right away, we give you some online alternatives that are free.
Yes, I also want to point out, if you only had to buy one book, which one would you recommend?
If you only had to buy one, just because Demetra's is the first of a two-parter that she's doing, I would buy Chris's book, because you have all of the topics that we cover in class contained in that book. Whereas Demetra's book, there's going to be probably a few concepts that don't come until part 2 of that book. So, but it's close because they're both really, really great. It's just Chris's book probably contains a more concise overview of a lot of the topics in the year 1 program that I teach.
Yes, I do want to point out though that the meat and potatoes, is that the right phrase,
Yeah.
of the course is actually included in the live classes. So like everything you need to learn will be presented by Acyuta himself at some point.
Yeah, and the way that I teach Hellenistic astrology is also it's in my own unique packaging, right? So the reading is supplemental, meaning it will reiterate things that I've taught in class, but the way that I teach Hellenistic astrology is it's fundamentally rooted in some things that are very different from those textbooks as well. So they're like supplemental reading, but not like, I wouldn't call them like primary reading. Like, you can't learn from this program unless you have those books. Like Delia said, you could take the classes and do no reading, and you would get all of the information that you need. Yeah.
So, but you do teach additional concepts to what is in those books.
Yeah, that's what I just said. There's going to be there's material in the books that will support and add the kind of reiterate things that we've said in class, and having that additional form of support is really helpful because it just helps you integrate the material at a deeper level. But there's lots of concepts that I teach that aren't in either of those books at all, and so that the primary material is the actual course itself.
Right. People always ask this, are there digital versions available? There is a version of Chris Brennan's book on sale on Google Books. So that's a really good option, especially if you're an international student and are concerned about shipping and actually physically acquiring the books. You can get the digital version of Chris Brennan's book, and it tends to be a little bit less expensive also. Dimitra's book does not have a digital version as of yet that I'm aware of.
Right.
And then also for the question about the astrology software, I do want to point out that in the class materials that we provide to you, there will be tutorials on how to set up, for example, astro.com with the settings that we use for class. And if you experience technical difficulties, you can also write in with those kinds of questions as well, and we'll help guide you through all of those.
Yeah, there's been some really helpful tutorials developed by Delia and some students and things like that too, so that you're definitely not alone when it comes to learning how to use, for example, if you get Solar Fire, which is the program that I use, or if you use some of the online programs, there's going to be some videos there to help you figure out how to use them as well, which is super, super helpful.
Mm-hmm. Although in the first year course, really, all you really need to do is to be able to cast a chart with the settings for Hellenistic astrology. You don't need like that many advanced features for year one. So yeah, the free tools will do.
Yeah, it's the first year program, the setup is pretty basic. Second year, it gets a little bit more sophisticated, but that just means that if you were planning on buying software, you really wouldn't have to until if you were going to go all the way through year one, maybe until the end of year one. So anyway, okay, there's more, I know.
Okay. I'm a true beginner. Is this course appropriate for me?
Yeah. Yeah, there's two kinds of students that join this program. There are people who are absolute beginners, in which case you are starting from the foundations of ancient astrology. So you're learning it all from the ground up. And there's some remedial content and some, for people who are in that phase of being a total beginner to astrology, you may move at a different pace than some of your classmates, and that's absolutely fine. We also are there to support people who are at the complete, ground up at that stage. But there's also another type of student who tends to be one who already knows something about astrology or maybe has been studying it for a while, but is looking for a more grounded and structured approach to learning, or is specifically interested in learning Hellenistic astrology, in which case, even though you may know something about planets, houses, signs, aspects, etc., you are going to be relearning them from a perspective that you've never had before. And in some ways, it's like you're going to go back and have to relearn and add to your existing knowledge. And in a sense, you have to adopt a little bit of a beginner's mind to do that. But you will walk away feeling like you learn 10 times more about the basics than you thought you already had. So there's this other category of student who's like, yeah, I've been around, I know a little something already, but then taking this class, it's like, oh, wow, there's so much more there than I thought there was. And then you feel equipped with this very foundational sort of trustworthy approach to things that before might have been piecemealed together a little bit more. And you understand how they all hang off from each other. That's really the benefit for, say, a student who hasn't had any real formal teachers or classes or training in Hellenistic astrology, knows something a little bit about modern astrology, but in a sense, it's good for that student too. And you'll be right where you need to be.
Yes, in the discussion forum, we always get comments from people who have some knowledge of astrology, and they, after we cover houses or planets or any of the topics in And they always say, wow, like I really, this really clicked for me, or the other approach never really fully made sense. This makes so much more sense. I'm really getting it now. Like we get that feedback a lot because I'd say that, okay, so since I'm Achuda's assistant as well as his TA, I also handle enrollment emails and things like that. So, if you send in an email, to enroll, you'll be hearing from me. And I'll say that we get about like a 50-50 split between people who are more on the beginner side and people who already come in with some knowledge of astrology. That's what I've kind of seen. Do you agree,
Yeah,
Achuda?
yeah, that's usually the two types of students are people who are usually it's like you're a student of modern astrology, but you're like, wow, this is really Hellenistic astrology is really interesting. Like ancient astrology and philosophy is really interesting. And there's a lot that I don't know about it. And I realize that and I want to go and learn about it. You're starting as a beginner like everyone else in that sense, but you have some knowledge there that will probably help you to move along a little bit more quickly. But at the same time, like I said, like just because you're seeing on the syllabus that we're talking about planet signs, houses, etc., it is really, really night and day difference from the way that it's taught in modern astrology. So you will be a beginner in a sense again, but that knowledge you already have will be greatly helpful for you. And for beginners who are there, you're moving at your own pace, and there's not like a competition in class, and we're fielding
Yeah.
questions basically from beginners to people who've been around a lot and making sure that we are very careful not to get ahead of ourselves or make you feel overwhelmed by things that you're not ready to understand yet. It's paced really, really and structured really intentionally that way.
I went through the course too. I am a graduate of the year one program, and I came in as a beginner, as a total beginner. So I can totally vouch for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Will I be a certified astrologer after taking this course?
Yeah, I mean, there's not like, a grand board of wizards somewhere in the astrology world that's like, now you're an astrologer. So you have two basic models for astrological certification. You have a wide variety of different organizations around the world that are usually, just put together by astrologers, and they may collectively have some kind of exam that you take, and then you may like gain a certification. And then the other model is for individual practitioners who have long-standing practices, who are more or less highly regarded in the astrological world. On in some level, they're speakers at conferences, they write, etc. Um, they'll have apprenticeship or classes that you will take, and upon graduating with whatever their testing requirements are, you'll receive more or less a certificate of apprenticeship. I studied with this particular astrologer. So that's what you're getting in my program. They're both valuable. The one thing to remember is that there's the bigger organizations, the way that they're going to test you is going to be in terms of a modern astrological approach. So the things that they'll test you on would not be in line with, for example, most of the classical rules, methods, techniques, theories of Hellenistic astrology. So there's no like certifying board or organization for Hellenistic or classical astrologers. Maybe there will be in the future, and I'd actually be very interested to participate in such a thing. But in the meantime, I just tell people, look, it's a piece of paper, and at the end of the day, and it's really just a sign that you went through a really in-depth, rigorous program, went through a test at the end, and and passed, and that you studied with a particular astrologer who is known and respected on some level. And I think that's what I've gotten from the astrologers that I've studied with. I've done apprenticeships with a couple of astrologers and, gotten a certificate at the end. But I can call on them. Like in the astrological world, there's real value in that. And people say, well, where did you get your training? You can say, well, I studied with so-and-so. And I can do that for my, for myself too. I can talk about the astrologers I've studied with. So that's kind of the value that you get in certification. But more than that, I think just psychologically, it's good to test yourself on what you've learned over the course of my program. And if nothing else, it'll just give you the confidence that like you've gone through certain testing of your skills and understanding. And I think that gives you a lot of confidence to go out and practice with other people.
All right. About certification, I would like to add that you will have 1 year after the end of the course to turn in your certification exam, which is optional. And that's really the only thing that you turn in or hand in to us. It was Achuta mentioned earlier that there is optional homework and there are optional quizzes, and those are primarily for your self-study. And the only thing that we really evaluate is the certification exam itself. But you will have a good long while potentially to turn that in case you need that extra or want that extra time to study a little bit more.
Yeah, we the basic idea here is that because we have students from all over the world and life happens and sometimes life gets busy, we don't want people to feel pressured because it's not fun to feel pressured when you're taking a course you really want to enjoy. So you can move at your own rate through the program. You get to keep all of the program content, download it, it's yours to keep. And then within a year of the completion of the program, if you're still working through it at a different rate and speed, you can still email us questions. You can still be in touch with us. You can have up to a year to take the test if you want to. So you technically have 2 full years from the start of class within which to absorb the information, keep the content, work with it, and then take the test if you want to. So we try to make sure that people, it's just not fun to feel like you're in, for a lot of people who take this class, it's people have professional aspirations and a lot of people who are just doing it for spiritual and personal enrichment. And for those people, it's easier if you can take it at your own pace and ingest it at the rate that feels best to you.
Okay. Yes. Will there be chart practice during the course? Does Achuta look at students' charts during the course?
Right. So, yeah, almost every single lesson on the year includes demonstrating the theory or techniques that we're studying in chart examples. Earlier in the course, we're working on understanding philosophy and core kind of metaphysical and philosophical concepts and gradually working our way into the technical language that eventually leads to how to interpret charts. And then the very end of the class, we have about 9 or 10 classes out of the 30 after the first 20, which are like theory based, that are hands-on, where we have live clients come into the classroom and I read for them. And then after they leave, we sit around for another hour and talk about the session, and people ask questions about how and why I chose to do different things and the reading. And we talk about, working with people or developing our counseling skills, you could say. We also talk at length about, charts that we bring into class. We have practice days that are just purely designated for bringing charts into class from all of you to work on. Sometimes that's going to be students' charts. Sometimes that's interesting charts or examples in charts that people come across while they're practicing outside of class. So there's a lot of room for that. I don't read every single person's chart, personally. Obviously, I wouldn't have time for that, but there are definitely there's a lot of recommended ways in which to engage with your own chart and share your findings with your classmates throughout the whole year as well.
Also, if you're taking the class remotely, you like at the last third of the course, which is more hands-on and practice, you can totally post your chart if you're okay with sharing it. It's just within the group. Nobody shares charts or anything outside of class, but you can totally share your chart in the discussion forum and get your classmates' feedback through there as well.
Right on. How are we doing? Any other questions?
Yes. Okay. Do you look at transits and timing techniques during year 1?
Nope, that's during year 2. I know that's for some people that's going to feel like, oh no, like that I'm really advanced, or like I want to. That's something I really want to do. All I can say is trust me when I tell you that you'll be very, very happy that you took a full year to study this ancient form of astrology very, very slowly, and that when you get to year 2, you're going to be in a place that very few people are, because they don't take their time and because they try to jump ahead to really sophisticated things that can't be done well until you learn a lot more basic things. So that's my advice is, and also, for those of you who know a bit about that already, it's not like you won't be able to, there's elements of you can't, there's some things you can't not talk about. So there's ways in which transits are and timing techniques are peripherally being addressed in the first year program, but it's really the whole focus of the second year. We learn how to read natal charts in year one. We learn how to time out the karma signified in the birth chart in year two.
How does the process for continuing with year two work?
You just sign up, and it's offered, right now it's offered in the spring. It starts in the spring on another weekend day, and typically it's going to be it's going to be starting at 10 a.m. Eastern time in the morning before one of the year one programs on Saturday or Sunday.
But just if somebody is enrolling in the course this November, will they be able to take the year two program in June?
Yes. Yeah. Once you are through the theoretical portion of the course, which you will be by the spring, if you start this fall, you'll be able to jump in and simultaneously start in on the year two class. So people can, as long as people are about halfway through my year one class, they're ready to jump into the theoretical concepts in year two. And the November students, a lot of them do that. Like a lot of the November students will jump into year two in June. As they're finishing up year one, they're starting into year two. And as long as you have the time to do so, there's no problem in terms of being able to understand what we're talking about.
Yes. All right, great. Last question. What are the breakout study groups? When are they? And is there an extra cost?
No extra cost for them. Though we do pay Delia well for doing them. Delia is the leader of those study groups. So we're going to go through a unit of material, pause for a week break, come back, and then Delia leads an afternoon class, just like our normal class, but it's all there just for people to ask questions and to go back over and revisit the concepts that we learned in the last unit. And these concepts, for a lot of people, it's really worth it because there's a lot to integrate and learn about ancient astrology. It's not just what does a sign mean, what's a personality like, what is this planet all about, or you know what I mean? It's you're learning a lot, and you're learning how to synthesize a lot of different information. And so those breakout study groups are really awesome for that. And you can listen to them because they're recorded as well. So if you can't make it live to them, they're recorded and put into the class folder online as well for you to keep. Delia leads them. They're time for Q&A. They're time for, practicing a bit with what you've learned. So they're really, really valuable part of the course, and they're free. It's part of your tuition.
You can also send questions. If you're not able to attend the study group, you can send questions in beforehand, or I'll usually ask on the class discussion forum, which is currently hosted on Facebook. We want to migrate off of it, but I think we're not sure whether that will happen for November or the next spring course, right, Acyuta?
Yeah, the plan is to migrate off from the Facebook discussion forum into something else. But because I moved, we just moved, and we've been kind of just getting settled. I haven't had as much time to devote to that. And the fall season is really busy for me because I'm also preparing for my annual Kickstarter at the end of the year and so forth. So it'll be by spring of 2021 that our forum will be off from Facebook, but that's in the works. So this is the last class that we'll have to endure a Facebook forum. I know it's not like the ideal setting in the world, but the forum discussions are really nice. And generally speaking, it's like that group has been a really positive part of the class.
All right. Well, parentheses aside, so usually I'll make a post saying like, hey, what do you have questions about? Is there anything in specific that you would like covered? And I'll take that into account. Also, the study sessions are at the same time as regular class. It's always going to be on the same day as regular class on weeks that we are off from class with Acyuta. And then the week after that, you'll go back to Acyuta. It'll be the same class link, etc. And it's just a nice opportunity to reinforce the material. We try to have them after each series, after we conclude a topic. So for example, like for planets, there will be 3 classes on the planets. And then after that, there will be a study session. Then there will be 3 classes on the houses. And then after that, there will be a study session. And that's how we try to time it out. Although that's kind of a rough guideline, right, Achuta? It won't always be that
Right.
necessarily.
Right. And you need those breaks because you're doing, like at the houses, there's 9 to probably 12 hours worth of content in class on the 12 houses. And then in bonus material, there's probably 30 to 40 hours of additional stuff you could take in if you wanted to. Not everyone, like, I don't know anyone that's going to take all of it in, right? But so with each unit though, it's like you're going into something at a pretty deep level. So it's really good to have that break afterward and then have a study session where you can just kind of come back and integrate it and then move on to the next unit. Yeah.
All right, that's all I've got for you.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Delia, for being here, and for helping and for being such an integral part of all the programs. As the programs were growing, I was really starting to get super overwhelmed doing it all by myself. And Delia has come in and also made, like, she's taken all of my presentations and she has graphic designer resume as well. So she's like, revamped the presentation aesthetically, and so you'll hear a lot of her handiwork in the course. Yeah, we're just super thankful for you, Delia. Thank you.
People are going to be confused. They're like, is she an attorney? Is she an English teacher? Is she a graphic designer?
She's a Gemini is what she is.
That's the answer.
She does a lot of stuff. So yeah. So if you are interested in the course, we have a couple of different tuition options. I'll close with this. You can go to nightlightastrology.com. If you have any questions, you can email us info@nightlightastrology.com. On the website at nightlightastrology.com, under the courses page, there is the first year course. That's Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. And there are 3 ways that you can make payment. You can choose an early bird rate. We save about $500 off the total cost if you pay in full before the start of the course. That's like one upfront payment. There's a payment plan. You can stretch it out over 12 months. And then there's need-based tuition payment plan, which is there for people who are, say, single parents, only working part-time, a full-time student. And if you're on disability, if you're retired and on a fixed budget, whatever the case might be. And also people who are struggling due to COVID-19. So we never want to price people out. So probably somewhere probably 50 or 60% of our students over 10 years have been on some form of need-based tuition. So my astrology school is also kind of known in the larger astrological community for being really, really inclusive and budget friendly in that way. I think that's important because I really want to see astrology live on generationally, and that's not going to happen if astrological education is only for people who have more money. So we try to spread it out and make different options available. So be sure to look at that if you need it. And again, the early bird rate will be in effect all the way up until the start of class. And then afterwards, it's the full payment plan only. So yeah, I think that's it. Thanks, Delia, for being here. I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you in class soon. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Talk to you guys later.